For a person that does not like tournament arcs, why in the world would I watch a show that is pretty much nothing but a tournament? But I'm actually very pleasantly surprised. But yes, this is my review on Record of Ragnarok, or Shuumatsu no Walkure, and this is a series that premiered on Netflix and ran for 12 episodes, so let's jump into it. Record of Ragnarok opens up with a meeting of the gods, and since the series pretty much meshes together all these different mythologies, you have the Greek mythology, you have biblical, you have Norse, Hindu, all these are kind of meld together. It's essentially a meeting of all these different gods, and they all are basically deciding each 1,000 years if mankind will continue living on. In this particular meeting at this current time, they have decided that they want to wipe out mankind. They're tired of watching over them. They're tired of taking care of them. So they've decided, let's just wipe it out. And the only one to come to mankind's favor is Brynhildr, the Valkyrie. And she shows up and she pretty much says, let's let mankind decide. Let's have Ragnarok. So she employs this article for Ragnarok, which it basically implies that mankind will get 13 heroes together, and the gods will get 13 gods together, and they will fight in the arena, and the best of 7 will basically win. So if the gods win, mankind will be wiped out. If mankind wins, they won't get wiped out. And even though they're like, why would we do that? She basically angers them by saying, well, what are you afraid of? They're just humans, right? Are you going to chicken out? And in doing so, pretty much invokes their wrath, and they're like, yeah, let's do this. Let's have this Ragnarok. Brynhildr is employed to basically put together those 13 heroes, select 13 contestants, and they will come in here and they will fight our gods, and we'll see who wins in the end. And she agrees to it because Brynhildr, being that she wants to kind of help mankind, she does have a plan. She's not doing this, willy-nilly. So yeah, she basically puts together a list of contestants who will come in and protect mankind. But as you would guess it's similar to something like the Fate series, where they do have these, people written in the past who are, heroes or commanders or whatever, that are kind of brought in, and they have like this kind of very over-the-top representation of themselves. So right off the bat, we have Lubu shows up, and Lubu is just this very strong and very commanding person that comes into the arena. And thus begins this entire tournament where mankind, again, their heroes will come out. The people who kind of supported them in their time period would show up in the arena, and they'll cheer them on. And all the while the gods are looking upon going, this is kind of foolish. These humans are not going to be able to take them on. But this, in a sense, is exactly what Brynhildr wants. Brynhildr wants them to come into this thinking that, these are humans, they can't take us on, and thus essentially let their guard down and thus be taken over. Because she does have a secret weapon, which that is the Valkyrie themselves. For those that are kind of, knowledgeable Valkyrie, they support the humans. In this particular sense, they become the weapons that the humans will then employ in combat, and thus give them that little bit of edge they need. But a lot of the focus really is on the hero themselves, and almost this kind of twisted history, whereas it kind of lays out, this is what the history books wrote afterwards, after their story ended, but in actuality, this is what their actual story was. And that take on it does create an interesting take on the actual heroes themselves, in the idea of what you have read about is not exactly the full truth in the eyes of this story and in the eyes of Brynhildr. Brynhildr is employing this idea of, take Sasaki, for example, being a person who always lost, but in actuality won millions of times in their own head, and that thus being employed in the combat gives them this advantage. Those little twists are exactly what kind of give this that extra flavor in a tournament arc, similar to my enjoyment of something like the Fate series, and the idea that you have these heroes of the past, but the story isn't complete, and there's these little extra things they're adding to their character as they employ them in this fictitious world. So yeah, my thoughts on Record of Ragnarok. I surprisingly love this series. I really did come into it pretty cold. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Yes, I had that little kind of concern of another Netflix series that obviously is not going to end with this particular series, this season. Is this going to be something that's ever going to be finished? Is it going to live on a really bad cliffhanger? It does, just like Netflix always does. it leaves it on a really bad point, but that's what Netflix does. So my first warning to everybody, this is not complete. They literally get through 3 bouts, and again, this is the best 2-7. There's 13 total fighters on both sides. You can assume that they might be able to get to upwards of 13 matches, but that's not going to be covered here. They spend pretty much a good 4 or so episodes on each fight. So these are long fights. These are fights that are very thorough, and the back and forth between the 2 fighters, these aren't really quick matches. These are some stuff that really kind of takes a lot of diving into the characters and diving into what's happening in the battlefield. And so, like I said, this is not complete. And that is, of course, going to be a concern for a lot of people. But no, why did I enjoy it so much? I think a lot of my enjoyment is around, yes, I do have that similar feel that I do with the Fate franchise. I do love getting this kind of twist to the people of the past that we've written their stories. This is how they live their lives, and then taking that and kind of twisting it a lot just to kind of give it a lot more flavor and a lot more flair to the character. I mean, Lubu's stories were pretty out of nowhere. I mean, even Thor, they got into this goofy Attack on Titan kind of storyline. It is this kind of concept of, again, bending what we know and doing some crazy bombastic stuff with it. Additionally, I found this series to be continuously going more and more absurd. I will admit, in the first couple episodes, I really wasn't feeling it. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is a tournament. Yeah, they're gonna clash swords. Yeah, it's over the top, crazy muscles, and I mean, Thor and Lubu look completely ripped. They have these gigantic muscles. There's a lot of detail given to their huge physique. But as it went along, and I think especially once the end of the first bout happened and they got into the second match, that's when I was getting really sold on this. I think the introduction of Adam and his fight, just like I said, it was snowballing this crazy over-the-top story, these crazy over-the-top fights, that it sold me on it. This is like when it starts hitting that shonen nerve of just these crazy, bombastic, over-the-top fights that just get crazier and crazier and crazier as it goes along. But like I said, I have to say, for sure, the second fight sold me on the series, and I'm like, I want more now. I want more. This is really cool how they took Adam's character and threw him into this fight and sold him as a character in the universe itself. Just really, the one quote that I love to death was this: "Why do you fight as hard as you fight?" And Adam's like, who needs an excuse to protect their children? I'm like, that makes perfect sense. They're modeling him after being the father of all humans. Thus, yes, if mankind's in danger, he wants to protect his children. They're literally all his children. That kind of writing and that kind of presentation of him, I was like, this is so cool. I love Adam. This is so freaking awesome. I could have never imagined. I think the moment they kind of presented that Adam would be, because it was like the third or so episode, they presented a list of contenders, and Adam was listed, and I'm like, Adam? Really? Adam? And then how they made him into a character and threw him into this world, I was like, yes, this makes sense. I love Adam. This is so freaking awesome. So yeah, it pulled it off. It pulled it off in spades. I also really did like the fact that they did have Brynhildr essentially have a cost at this fight. Yes, she's trying to help the humans, but there's a cost to her. And that cost is pretty dire. Like I said before, there is an element of bringing the Valkyries into the mix. And the way they kind of brought that into the mix and thus made a cost to Brynhildr herself, who is absolutely weird. In one moment, she's goofy. In one moment, she's just absolutely sadistic. In another moment, they made Brynhildr have so much weird character. And I think the opening scenes of her really didn't sell that. And it wasn't until the later parts you see how crazy she is. Even with her interactions with Zeus is just way goofy. Because Zeus is actually, of course, being an old man, they got to have this aspect of liking to be hurt. So that exchange back and forth from a distance, because they're on opposite sides of this arena, is really great. I think Ghoul is the only weird thing in this show, honestly. Gould just doesn't look like she fits in this world at all. She's just this kind of very moe, short girl who's wearing modern clothes, and apparently she's in the mix with everything. I think they're laying it out that Gould is going to be like I haven't really looked into if Gould is actually a Valkyrie that has been in lore, but I'm assuming they're placing her as being like a Valkyrie of modern times. But again, she just doesn't fit. She doesn't fit artistically. She doesn't fit character design wise. She just doesn't fit. Even though I like her, she's cute. I love her reactions. Doesn't fit at all in this world at all, which is something to say because again, they made Adam fit. And I really didn't think he was going to fit the situation, but he does. Yeah, I will say, artistically, it looks great. There were some points which they were doing like some backstory stuff where it just is like sliding stills, but overall, it's really well done. And it's very surprising because it's technically, there's a lot of detail in some of these characters. Like some of the characters being so ripped and so well detailed, it does concern me the idea of can they pull off animating these characters because there's so much detail to them. I don't see animators being able to pull this off. And yes, while a lot of it is kind of using animation techniques to kind of hide that they're not moving them, it does very well. There, you can feel kind of the impact in the animation. You can feel the movement of the characters. So they do an incredible job of that, of actually making it seem like they're moving when they're not. And when they do move, you can, like I said, you can feel that impact. So overall, I think for what they're having to animate, they're doing an incredible job. And I was caught up in the fights. I was really, invested in what was happening on the screen. So yeah, overall, love the series. And I'm absolutely surprised that I love it as much as I do because it's essentially just a tournament. Like the entire thing is a tournament. But there is a lot of kind of mind play that's happening. There is this aspect of almost the gods realizing just how strong human spirit can be. The respect that the contestants have on the battlefield, that respect that's built over time, the element of if a human can kill a god, what does the gods think of that? Does that cause fear? What was that change in their perspective of everything? Do they gain respect? Do they gain fear? Do they wipe them out just because they can kill them? Those kind of questions are stuff that I really am interested in getting into if we hopefully ever get a continuation of this series. And I hope it does. Because that is the biggest stain that I obviously can give this series is, do you jump in now? I think it's worth it. I think it is a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun watching it. But at the same time, there is the caveat of, do keep in mind, this isn't over. This is barely even scratched. If anything, if you can draw conclusions based on what has been done so far, this is not even a quarter of the show or a quarter of the story. Again, if you base it on the idea of how many bouts they can essentially end up having to do. So I am interested to see more. They technically do give you a brief glimpse of what will be in the contestant roster. And some of that stuff is like, what I want to see. Again, this is Tesla. What are we going to do with Tesla? We made Adam work. Why not Tesla? Let's do it. Let's figure out how this is going to work. Beelzebub, all that kind of stuff is going to be thrown in there. And I'm really curious to see how that pans out. So, like I said, I really enjoyed it. I will put the big, huge caveat that it is unfinished. And we don't know when the sequel is going to come. But I had a lot of fun. I really did enjoy it. And I'm very surprised how much I enjoyed it. It's just crazy, over-the-top tournament fun of just bashing each other, messing with lore of characters, and just will mankind be wiped out. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out. Again, Record of Ragnarok, a series on Netflix. But I hope you all enjoyed this review. If you did, leave a like down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of this series, if you're going to check it out. If you have any questions, subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if you can. And y'all take care.